2003. What's that feeling? You know, the most important pigeon race in the world.
Yeah, you know, the pigeons are a thing that I've loved for so long, and it's an experience that I've never had anything like it. To win the biggest race in the world, and to be like a minute and a half ahead, it was really amazing. And I had a problem. I couldn't even sleep for about a week normal. I mean, the first night I might have slept for an hour, maybe the second night 2 hours, and on like that. It was just something else to, it was like a constant adrenaline rush. It's so hard to explain.
And you were there in Africa.
Yes, and I was there, but you know, sometimes it's kind of boring to be sitting waiting for maybe hours on a pigeon race. You don't know really when they're getting back. There's all the weather reports and stuff, so didn't want to really waste time while I'm there. Wanted to be doing things, so we had gone swimming that day, had gone on a safari, lots of things to do in Africa at that race. So it was busy. So I got the call from Bob Kinney, and he says, "Dave, how you feeling?" I says, "Yeah, I'm fine. We just didn't want to hang out at the pigeon thing, so wanted to go do some other things." And he says, "Do you feel any richer?" And I go, No. He goes, "Well, you should." And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You just won the $1 million pigeon race." And I says, "Are you kidding me?" Maybe a little different wording than that, but I couldn't believe it. And he says, "Yeah, so how soon can you be over here? They want to interview you." And I says, "Yeah, we'll be there in a little bit." So pretty neat.
That was Never Say Die.
Yes. And you know, the odd thing about the name of that pigeon, we didn't name it. Back then, I didn't name any of my pigeons. I just let them name them, and it happened to be Never Say Die. So it was a very tough race. There was still a lot of daybirds that day. I think that year there might have been 150 some daybirds. So not a terrible race, but you know, a good name for a pigeon. It gives everything and comes through, you know, headwinds, thunderstorms, all the weather that if you were racing in Florida in the summertime, it would be like that, because it's racing in South Africa in their summertime. It's to accommodate all the people in the Northern Hemisphere who breed pigeons at a different time of the year, that to race them in their summer is advantageous for getting large numbers in $1 million race.
You eventually ended up going to Europe. What led you to going to Europe, and how did that all play out, getting the stock of birds that we know today?
Well, it started to be that I was born and raised in Wisconsin and just had local pigeons, and they weren't winning. I moved to Florida with them, still couldn't win with them. And it got to a point as I knew that with my success with show chickens and fighting chickens, that it took really good bloodlines to excel and to win. And got to a point where I decided I wanted to have really good pigeons. And where is the toughest competition? At that time it was in Belgium. And who was at the top of the game in Belgium at that time was 1991, when I bought my first Houbens. And so it had turned out to be that a neighbor of mine from Wisconsin had those pigeons at that time, that I could buy them from him. He had, it was Daryl Bruckner, traded his Hartog Jansons to Mike Gannis for some Houbens, and that was the first ones. In 1992, my first year racing them, after 11 winless years with pigeons, we were already club champions and won 6 out of 10 races our first year, and it was with the Houbens. And so then I went back to Wisconsin and bought Daryl Bruckner completely out of them birds in the fall of 1992, just 1 year after getting my first birds from him. Then the following year, I made my first trip to Belgium to Houbens directly, as that was Daryl's recommendation. He says, "Now you've got all the best that we've got here in USA. Your next step is to go directly to them in Belgium and get some birds from them." So the first year I went and stayed at their house for about 3 weeks. Wanted to learn how they trained and medicated and fed and everything. And then every year after, for several years I went, but with decreasing amounts of time as I was already becoming more educated and didn't have as much to learn as I did the first year. So I kept going back till the last year I went there was Jeff and Evelyn Houben's 50th wedding anniversary, and I think that was maybe 2002.
So tell me a little bit about the Houben family, you know, as far as the people, how they are.
The people were totally dedicated for the pigeons. I mean, there was pigeons in every house. So in Jeff and Evelyn's house, they had some of the most valuable old birds in addition onto the side of the house. At Nadia's house, there was pigeons in an extra bedroom upstairs, right next to the bedroom that I stayed in. And then there was lofts out back, and the whole backyard of both Jeff and Evelyn's and the daughter Nadia's places were all full of small pigeon lofts and large pigeon lofts, some of them 2 stories tall. So it was just a lot of birds. They were champions in Belgium. In 1991, they won the Golden Duff, which is the Golden Pigeon Award. It was just like the champion fanciers of Belgium. This is the year that Daryl Bruckner was already racing them in Wisconsin and dominating in a tough club and combine up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And when I saw him doing it, I thought maybe I could do it too if I had those pigeons. Years ago in Fort Myers, when we were winning in 1994, we won 8 out of 11 races, and that was more than that in the club, but in the combine, 8 out of 11 races. The 3 races we didn't win were won by friends of mine with my birds, so it shows the impact that those birds made. But there was a lot of skeptics and doubters and accusing me of doping the pigeons and everything else, and I really was offended by that, but I also knew that as long as they wanted to play the blame game, that they were not going to get better. They weren't trying to find that I'm training twice a day, what I'm feeding, that my wife is cleaning the lofts twice a day, that the pigeons at night had heaters. They didn't want to learn anything about that they maybe had to spend money and get better pigeons and improve. So as long as they were fine with saying that I might be cheating, that was really a way for them. It was a cop-out, so they didn't have to do all the work that we were doing. They didn't have to get better pigeons, but it also left them still at the bottom. Then in 1994, after that good season, I was going to quit pigeon racing because of all that, and Luke Houben talked me into, he says, do you know that some of your customers, you've been selling pigeons now for 2 years, do you know some of your customers are winning 1 loft races? And I says, yes, I hear that from a few of them. And he named a bunch of them. And as I'm getting older, in my 60s, mid-60s now, I want to do this more for fun and less for business. So I've got a lot less pigeons than I've ever had before. I breed a lot less. Of course, that's going to be a benefit to whoever does get any of my birds, that it's closer to the core of the quality of birds, whereas before, sometimes there was a lot of generations in between certain results. So to always get closer to what I'm scoring with today is a benefit for my customers. So I think my website will show that, what races I'm currently in, and I try to keep the website fairly current, adding new results as they happened, and you can learn a lot from just checking out my website, which by the way is clausingdavid.com.
Great, and I'll put the link on the video.
Okay.
Now, do you think a lot of events have degraded, like you said, even mostly within United States, you know, club races? There are events that back then had 3,500 pigeons, today have 1,500 pigeons. As a breeder, do you see anything in the United States that seems attractive at the moment?
There is a lot of opportunities out there, and a lot of good races and a lot of bad races. There's a lot of races that I'm not in that I'm thinking of for the next year, but thinking about it. So I'm trying to do my homework and see. I prefer to get into races where the returns are good, that I know they took good care of the pigeons. There's a lot of races where people get into having a 1 loft race for the money. In my opinion, that's the wrong reason to be in it. It's like,
like, if you're going to raise pigeons for the money, that's the wrong reason to be in it, because you're not going to be successful. Only someone who's kind of crazy about being a fanatic about, we got to pay attention to this and pay attention to that, and only the best breeders, and what all we do for our pigeons, and it's only someone who's real fanatical about the care and quality of their pigeons can really be the most successful. So if someone thinks they're going to get into it for the money, is the wrong reason. I just did a seminar a week ago at the Dixie Southern Convention race, and somebody says, well, do you know there's people who are getting into pigeons just for the money? And I disagreed. I said some of them people who are winning a lot really do love their pigeons a lot, because what all they're doing to get those great results.
I don't think there's even an amount of money that could pay off how much time and effort.
No, it's an obsession. When you're really good with the pigeons, you know, when we go to lunch later with my family, I'll have my notebook and pen in my pocket, and if I think of something, I'll write it down real quick. It's always in the back of my head. I'm always trying to think, you know, maybe it's a special mating, maybe I can do this, maybe I can do that. It's a lot of attention to detail, and like you say, you couldn't pay someone to have that in the back of their head all the time, to be so obsessed with it, to get to the point where the quality can be so good.
Is there any advice for the new generation like me that you can say from your experience, as far as where we can take the sport, or what needs to change, or what we can do to make the sport better and help it grow?
I would say that to have less politics involved, try to be more, if you see someone who's winning, you try to be their friend and to learn from them instead of discriminate against them. I think that's the way to get better. So I think it's always best to try to hang with the winners, to learn what they're doing, so that you can become a winner too. And the main thing for pigeons, above everything, is the quality. The genetic quality of the pigeons is everything. It costs the same to train them, to medicate them, to feed them. Everything, the costs are all the same. That initial expense of buying the best birds you can get is what is most important, and that's the thing that I learned the most. Not only with show chickens when I was in them, but also in game chickens, and then it came to be with racing pigeons. When I decided I wanted to take it seriously, I went for the best, and I tried to spare no expense. I tried to buy the best that I could possibly buy.
You kind of stuck with the Houbens for a long time. You didn't really, recently haven't really expanded outside of that, have you? I mean, you pretty much picked that family and ran with it. A lot of people will buy a bird for $20,000, and like you said, 2 years later it might be switching hands and the bird never really gets an opportunity to shine.
Yes, you know, I got, at the time I bought the Houbens, I also bought other bloodlines from Daryl Bruckner. I bought birds from Gannis and Hank Couillard's, the Jansen brothers. I had Lonnie Crawford birds from Texas and Campbell Strange birds. I had a lot of birds, but where my results were with the Houbens. So then I just eliminated everything else, and at the time focused entirely on that. But over the years there's been various crosses that I put in that have helped my birds a lot. I would say I've had the good fortune to have great relations with customers, so that when they're scoring with something that is my blood, that maybe they cross with some other blood that they had previous or added to it and got good results, I've been fortunate that they were willing to share that with me, and that's helped me a lot lately. I've had some great birds from good old friends and customers, and I'll just mention one guy, Lazaro Casanas, gave me a hen. It was his ace pigeon. She was 5th national long distance ace pigeon. He gave her to me. She's bred all kinds of winners and champions, and it's children and grandchildren from her that are breeding some of my best birds today. She was gone back to 3 original Ziko birds, but crossed in with some other long distance bloodlines. and it really made a huge impact for me. So I don't have really enough of them right now, but I'm breeding from 15 of her children this year, well, the coming 2018 breeding season. So I have to give a lot of thanks to him for that bird that's made the biggest impact for me and my birds recently. So at a time when he wants to get back into pigeons again, I want to help him and give him some birds to get going again if he makes that decision to.
Yeah, he was a great competitor when he flew here. He handled all the club matters, and he did a really good job as a secretary. I remember when I was a driver, he would call me at 3 times during the night and say, and he wasn't even racing, he was just making sure that I was doing what I had to do. I'd like to see him come back into the sport. I know he's got other occupations and other things that take up his time, but I would like to see him come back to the sport. That's the type of competitor the sport needs right now.
Yeah, we need guys like that. He selflessly took care of the combine secretary job many years before it was a paid position. When it became a paid position, he donated that money back to a trophy fund. Just a very good guy in every way that wants to give so much back to the sport, and it would be nice to have more guys like him, and I hope that with the customers I've helped with my bloodlines that I can be looked at somewhat in that way too, possibly. Well, I still play with the dirt bikes, even though I suppose I really shouldn't.
You shouldn't.
I broke my back on a motorcycle in Wisconsin 38 years ago almost, and I raced motocross at the time, and at the time I just had a few birds, and me and my wife were gonna I was gonna quit my construction job and just travel around the country going motocross race to motocross race, hopefully make enough money for gas and food and live in my van. That was what we wanted to do back so many years ago, 38 years ago. And then it got to be that I couldn't do that stuff, so that I made more of the birds that were my hobby a business, and started out with the show birds and then the fighting birds, and we sold the supplies and incubators and all the stuff for that. Then when I became more serious about the pigeon racing, I decided I wanted to eliminate all the other things and then concentrate more on the pigeon racing. But we already had the land, so we had the cattle and bred a lot of beef cattle, and we just sold that ranch in 2016. So now we're retired to just doing the pigeons again, and I hope to take the pigeons to a new level now that I can spend more than a couple hours a day with them, instead of all my activities being divided among so many things.
So many responsibilities. When you had your cattle, just curiosity, when you had your cattle, you ever have like Florida Panthers or Bobcats prey on them?
Not that I know of. We did at our Nocatee ranch have Florida Panthers because my wife's seen them.
Yeah.
We would hear them scream when we were in the woods. It's a blood-curdling scream.
It's a scary scream.
Yeah,
huh?
it is. It is scary. But no, we were lucky, but we did spend a lot of time out back by the cattle, and we would shoot coyotes. And,
yeah, there's a lot of those. You ever have big gators try to eat your cattle?
Yeah. There's one on my website that's not supposed to be on my website, according to my son, but that one ate one of our pit bulls. Yeah. And we had to get rid of that before it would eat one of my grandkids. So,
yeah, a huge gator.
Yeah, 10-foot gator on my website under David's photos.
So it was kind of wild down here when you were here. Yeah. Out in the woods.
Yeah. Yeah,
awesome.
a lot of adventures. We'd go back on four-wheelers or horses or dirt bikes and round up the cattle, check on them, make sure that nothing was bothering them, and yeah, a lot of responsibility keeping up all the fence lines and stuff.
You find out your birds are doing good in other places.
So then it's enticing for me to try that. So at the time I didn't really want to get into one lot racing, but I thought I'll do it. So I sent 2 birds to a race in Vegas, and one of them split $100,000 as it was on the winning drop with 10 other birds. So my check was like $8,975 and on a $400 investment. So that was very interesting. And at that time, with a young family, young kids, there was a lot of wish list that my wife had plans for that $8,975. And I said, well, I know that I spend a lot of our money on pigeons, but I'm going to spend this all on entry fees for a bunch more of these races. So I entered a whole lot of those races. And in 1995, our first year with One Loft Racing, we won over $94,000 profit that first year with pigeons. And then after that, money had never become a problem ever again. So in 1995, one of the first races we won was the San Diego Triple Crown. That was over $21,000. We won in the Asian Series in the FVC, Fernando Valley Club in California, over 22,000 there, and all the races added up. And then I was really hooked, not because of the money, but because now I had a gratification that I was really doing something. I didn't have the skeptics no longer accusing me of what they thought I was doing. It was just, I'd send my baby pigeons off, 6 months later someone would send them back with a big check, and here I go. And it was proving that I made the right purchases in buying those pigeons. And you know, the rest is all history. It got to be that Luke Houben wondered why I was winning those races so much more than his other American customers. And I told him, I says, there's a certain bird that comes off of a bird from you named Ziko, so I named my bird Ziko, and anything that I cross that bird with is scoring in any of these races, and whether it's headwinds, side winds, tailwinds, they're always there. The longer the distance, the more out front they are, the more they can really show their superiority, and that was it. So then in 1996, he asked that I would send a bunch of birds over to the Herberts, who would space those birds around in races in China and Taiwan and Thailand, Germany, Sweden, Switzerland, Greece, Belgium, and we beat some big names in the Belgium One Loft race 6 weeks out of 6 weeks, including Ad Sherlock and Joseph Tenay, William Gertz, the Houbens themselves, and it was all that blood. And so then the next year, Luke asked me to be their partner in some races around the world, and the first race was $1 Million race, and we had second that year, clocked to the same second as the winner. It was a bird that they bred, but I was partners on, and that was a big payday too. There was $100,000 for second place back then. I also bred the bird that was second ace pigeon that year. The next year I bred the first ace of the $1 Million race, and so on.
I know throughout the United States, Mike Gaines is the primary breeder, but here in Florida, as I travel from Miami, Southwest Florida, Spring Hill, Orlando, the only bloodline that seems to be the foundation to many lofts seems to be Houbens, your Houbens.
Yes.
What leads to having so many top fanciers take your bloodline? Not only that, but also maintain it, because when you look at any pedigree of yours, there's a lot of inbreeding, and how does that play a role? Inbreeding, line breeding, how does that play a role in not only making a strong bloodline, but preserving it to where it is today? In
the show chickens and game chickens that I had before the racing pigeons became my main focus, I formed families and won national competitions with those, and I did it with a family that provided the consistency. When I jumped to the pigeons, everybody says that won't work with the pigeons, and I says, well, we'll find out. And I did do it that way, but here's why it was successful. If you inbreed or line breed to very mediocre or inferior bloodlines, you'll get more of the same or even worse. If you inbreed or line breed to the most superior genetics, you will enhance that, and you'll get just a compounding of those qualities so that you can even do better. Then as that family gets to be maybe too close years later, they're excellent choices for crossing with almost any bloodline, as long as it's a good bloodline, because always to get good results, it takes two.
Here in Florida, some of those fanciers that we've talked about are people like that I've met are Gallo, I've met Oscar Betancourt. These are fanciers that are very accomplished, and they trust that Houben bloodline.
Yep.
How does it make you feel, and what type of customer interactions have you had with these folks?
It's very gratifying. These people reach out to me and they're proud of their accomplishments with my birds crossed with their birds, and it takes them to a new level. So, you know, I can only do so much myself, and even in the $1 million race, the best I've done for a car is I was 2/100ths from winning, 2/100ths of a second from winning a car one time, but I do have 9 customers who won cars in Africa. I have 5 customers win first ace pigeon in $1 million race, and that includes both hotspot aces and grand averages aces. No one else has got that, and it all goes back to that bird that I call Ziko. Also, there's been no one in the world who's been 4 times in the top 4 in the $1 million race, which I've been also. There has been 4 birds in the top 4 in the $1 million race that are Ziko blood, and it's very amazing. I was very lucky to get that bird, as when I bought Daryl Bruckner out in 1992, it was one of 33 imports on his place. But he had, that Ziko had changed hands 4 times before Ziko was 2 years old. So in those 4 times, no one had him long enough to see the results of his offspring. And I was fortunate that I did. And at that time, I don't think I knew very much about pigeons, and Ziko was not the most beautiful bird as most people would identify them. And fortunately, I hung on till I saw where the results were coming from. And I still breed to that results today. I breed only by results. A lot of people, it's the eye, it's the body, it's the wing. Winners come in different shapes and sizes, and you know, different races will give you different kind of winners also. But when you breed the best to the best, and you breed on results, it can only lead to more good results. If a bird's really that special, he's got to breed something as special or more special than himself. And that next bird, a couple of them were King David. Next was Dana, who's the father of 410. Dana is also the father of 248 of 2000, who is a full sister to 410, who bred my $1 million first place winner in Africa, Never Say Die. So as Ziko now, if he were still alive, it's like too many years, you know, for a pigeon to live. So it's fortunate to have birds that breed on and on and on, that the bloodline carries on with children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And now my birds, a lot of them are very inbred to that on a 5-generation pedigree, sometimes it doesn't even show all the ancestry going back to Ziko. So then I tell people to go to my website under the resources section and go back through some of the pedigrees of some of the older birds to bridge it back to Ziko, to link it to that, to show the continuation of the family.
A lot of breeders would say, "Wow, David, you pretty much give your customers the best and then you're left with nothing." I think that's good. If I'm a buyer, if I'm dealing with a breeder that's won, because a lot of breeders won't give out, you know, they give out what, you know, distantly to their customers, and their customers never really get a hold of the real firm foundation lines. How do you differ, or have differed in the past from other breeders?
You know, I'll kind of go way back to the Jansen brothers, that they could only win so many races in their area of Belgium. But when customers were winning, and customers of customers, and pigeons passed on through how many people scoring, I hope to be someday looked at like that I provided so many birds of the bloodline that can win, that can go on for generations for customers. And it's also that some people get a good pigeon here and a good pigeon there, and they can't win too consistently, so they probably can't share too consistently either. And I really made it easy that a lot of people could get the good blood, and that I could share my results and what I've done with the pigeons so much. So as you asked a question about some of my customers who are doing very well with my birds, it's really fun. It's on a day that I have no races, and I get a call, and somebody says, "Hey, David, I just did this. My pigeon did that. Thank you. It is half your blood or all your blood, whatever it is." Yeah, that's fun. It's a real ego trip. So, and for me, that's kind of what it is all about. As you know, you don't see me advertise much. I'm not concerned about the selling. I'm really concerned about breeding better pigeons and sharing them with a lot of people so they can breed better pigeons. And that's pretty much my ego trip. And everybody's different, but that's
no,
where
I
I'm
understand.
at.
I've had friends fly my birds. It's a good feeling.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you.
And it is good as this sounds strange, but it is as good a feeling when a customer does something, and then I see what these pigeons of mine have done for him and his family and so on. It is really very gratifying.
Yeah, definitely.
I think a way that I've been able to share so much good blood with so many people and have so many good contacts and friends because of my pigeons is I've done a lot with polygamists. And I'll give you a little bit of history that is prior to my pigeons polygamous. Is I had several national champions with chickens, and some of those chickens were really full of feathers, like Cochin chickens and silky chickens, and so much full of feathers that the good ones have a hard time mating through all the feathers. So I dealt with artificial insemination. So I could take a champion cock and mate it to many hens and mass produce like these other guys couldn't and didn't think of doing. But you know, I came from a dairy farm, and there too we only had 1 or 2 bulls, and every year there was a lot of calves from the dairy cows, but always only the best bulls were selected. So as I learned that from my grandparents, I applied that to the show chickens, then the game chickens, and then the racing pigeons. So Ziko was the first bird that I made polygamous because I could see all the results. So why have offspring from him with only 1 or 2 hens a year when I could breed him to a dozen or more hens a year? And he was good polygamous. King David and Dana were not so good polygamists, and it's all about personalities, that you got to deal with these pigeons and their personalities. But then Dana's best son was 410, and he was fantastic. I had 2 years consecutive that I bred over 90 babies each year from him, and it really set the world on fire because Luke Houben told me once upon a time, he says, your best bird, you should keep all of the young until you've bred from them to know which are your best breeders, because they're not all going to breed like the super breeder itself. And how do you breed from 90 children of 410 a year, and in 2 years over 180? So you share them, and you know, the results were fantastic for people, not just in this country, but all around the world. As I could share lots of birds from that blood, it really helped a lot of people. And it helped me too, because these are all good stories, all good customers, all good friends. I honestly could go on vacation and go around the world and stay at different friends and customers' house through the whole year, and you know, it would be fantastic, but I still have my own pigeons to deal with.
And your own family.
Yes.
When you start to win in a local club, we've seen here, and I'm the one saying this, not you, we've seen Yanil Garcia in Tampa pushed out of the club. We've seen Oscar pushed out of the club. We've seen this year now Israel and Luis Silva kicked out of their clubs in Tampa. What happens when somebody starts to win that leads to their demise within club racing? You don't even see too many famous or breeders that will actually race in a club today because of that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, for me, I raced in the Fort Myers Club. It was actually at the time Caloosahatchee Flying Club. Wow. And then as I won too much, they couldn't vote me out of the club, but they closed down the club and they started a new club, FMI, Fort Myers Invitational, and I was not invited. And this was done to eliminate me and Dick Bachman, other people with my birds, as Dick has had birds from me too, and great results forever.
He still wins, and he has, you know,
Yep.
he gets birds from imported,
Yep.
so obviously that's why he's got better birds.
And the more you win, the more they want to get rid of you. So
Yeah.
it's sad that it's like that, but I think, I don't know how to say it nicely. It's people who don't want to do the extra that the winners are doing to get up to their level, or they don't want to buy the better birds to get up to the level of the winners. It's
Or
probably,
they're just not born with the ability to know what to do with the birds.
yeah,
They don't
and,
have knowledge of animal care.
and it's an easy way out for them is to eliminate the winner. Now second place is the new winner, but they're still
Or even-
second rate.
Yeah, or fourth or fifth.
Yeah,
Depends on
who
the.
knows how many people they have to throw out to make them feel good that they're doing something again. So
This is leading to the demise of the sport, because now we have 7 or 8 lofts, even locally, we have 7 or 8 lofts who could be racing. I mean, only 84 lofts won the JC Classic this year. Here you have 7 or 8 guys locally who can't race because they're pretty much, you know, forced out. They want to race, but they can't.
yes, and it's leading to the demise of the sport, not only because of eliminating those superior flyers, handlers, breeders, but also as they've got families and they've got kids, and they go, look what's happening to Dad. This isn't so good. I don't think this is anything.
I wouldn't want my
we wanna-"
kids.
Yeah, the kids look and go, I don't want to do this. And when it got to be bad that people were accusing me of doping my pigeons back in 1994, and shaking their fists and their fingers in my face and all that, I says, I don't really need this. I'll quit. So my wife went to the club with my birds for me, and then she got sick of it. Then my 16-year-old son, who had just got his driver's license, could finish out the season for us. You go from 30 people in the club that you think are your friends until you're winning, and you find out you've got maybe 3 or 5 friends, and the rest become your enemies because they don't want to do all what you have to do to become a winner. They don't want to step it up a level. And those guys really are losers forever. And I have no hard feelings about that, because honestly, they did me a big favor.
They did you a big favor.
I got into one loft racing. My pigeons can do it on their own, and it's made a lot of money. And I didn't get into this for the money, but the one loft races have been very good for me and my family, and now my grandkids. And it all goes back to getting thrown out of the club. So maybe some of these other guys got some silver linings in their future, like what happened for us.
So you actually wrote, and if you go to your causing website on the internet, you actually have articles there, and those articles get into detail about everything that happened. Personally, I really respect that. I wish I could say everything that happened to me, because it's stuff that hurts you. You want to share it. You want people to know the truth, but not everybody has the bravery to do that. You know, you actually went on your website and told your story how it was, with no fear of retaliation, no fear of what people are going to think about you. You just went in there and were honest about all the things you went through.
Yes, I hope that some of that can help other people too. So it's kind of like sharing good birds. If you can share the truth, that goes a long way for helping other people, whether it's overcoming whatever problems or shortcomings you have, and moving forward and always trying to look for something positive.
Yeah, well, I think the positive thing that I draw from it is to understand that these situations are not new. This is a repetitive thing. These people with this mindset have been doing repetitively since pigeon racing began. So the problems that we're facing now, you know, you faced it in the 90s, we're facing it now. It's a repetitive pattern of behavior that's predictable, and that's pretty much nothing you can do about it. It's just people that suck.
Yeah, it's sad that it is like that in the pigeon sport, and it really hurts the sport. Before I got into the racing pigeons, before I broke my back, I did motocross, and there it was probably the complete opposite. Everyone would help everybody, and so it was always puzzling that the people in the pigeons, that there was a lot of this negative, and so we try to hang around with the positive people and make them our friends and customers, and and stay away from the others, stay away from the bad, the negatives.
Could it have to do something with the fact you get just an ego? You're so attached to the animals that sometimes a bird means more than a friend. That's the the way I put it sometimes. Sometimes for some people, one bird is more important than a friendship, which I don't understand that, but for some people it's that way.
Yeah, it is. It's just sad how the sport is going, because it's something that I would like to see, that my kids and grandkids could more enjoy, but they've saw what I've went through with getting thrown out and all the accusations and everything, and even though they did me a favor long term, it still is something that scarred the minds of my sons, thinking about, nah, I don't think this is what I want to get into.
Yeah, and honestly,
different.
If I had if I had children, I wouldn't want my children to be in the situations that we find ourselves in the sport. And I don't know if there is a solution to that, but that's definitely something that everybody in the pigeon sport needs to think about.
.248 of 2000, who is a full sister to 410, who bred my $1 million first place winner in Africa, Never Say Die. So as Ziko now, if he were still alive, it's like too many years, for a pigeon to live. So it's fortunate to have birds that breed on and on and on, that the bloodline carries on with children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And now my birds, a lot of them are very inbred to that on a 5-generation pedigree, sometimes it doesn't even show all the ancestry going back to Ziko.